There are a lot of people who understand the power of a narrative, whether it's around the dinner table, the lunch counter, or the UN Security Council, or corporate media, which is, of course, the PR function for the strongest in an economy. Those who lead in an economy define leadership a little bit differently than what people yearn for and what people say is what they should look for and vote for, although that's falling out of favor now, understandably. Those with a global perspective. But, a narrative is what is going to happen. So what I would do, I don't know what's going to prevail. I do know that gotcha is the name of the game, and it's like musical chairs. The music stops and somebody doesn't have a seat. And the winnowing has begun among people yet again. But we don't really, one thing we can measure is that there are a lot of mysteries about why certain problems never get solved. For example, in the U.S., the engine that keeps on giving is this mysterious business of racism, and we just can't solve that problem. We can go to the moon, but we cannot solve that problem. It's a case of, double toil and trouble. People just keep on stirring that pot. And then people, it's like bobbing for apples in that same steamy mess. And one thing or another, or climbing a greasy pole to get on top. And it's rough and tumble, and lately it's gotten really raw competition. Started, boxers who now take off their gloves and go at each other like they did over a century ago. With broken hands and broken jaws, and now though it's as though the titans of the Middle East and that proxy area, the titans are so dignified that they will not, demystify much of anything or really get serious with one another. Although the game is beginning to get a little raw because people have white hot light shined on them here or there, shining into the corners of sorts, and so they've got to come up with something, as a great saying goes. And I consider this, all right, the kids are studying American history. Don't get righteous, I'd tell them. America, that is the United States, began usurping land of Native Americans summarily. And then, once they got started, they killed American natives. Who knows what we might have been calling the continent if not America? What would we call it? I don't know. There's some technicians who think they have the answer to that. But anyway, so once upon a time, a man named General Jackson campaigned to become president by saying he would kill as many Indians as he could, meaning the Native Americans. That's what he said. The hue and cry of the campaigning was pretty raw back then, in his day, and so on. And so he said, I'm running for president, and I'm telling you that if I'm elected, I will kill every Indian that I can. And people say, yay, that means, I'll have, my piece of land for my family and so on, you know. And so he did. He did the best he could. He didn't kill as many as he wanted to. So now, when we get down to brass tacks about the Middle East, is it a question of genocide now? Sort of like what did people measure or estimate the crisis to be in South Africa many years ago? And isn't it something to see now that the South Africans have the wherewithal to coordinate the move International Criminal Court against Israel? And some people say that they're going to abide by that court's decision. Some say they won't. And of course, as a matter of principle, the U.S. has always maintained it is too big and too powerful to get on its knees in front of a tiny little court cobbled together somewhere in Europe when, as a matter of fact, the United States runs the whole entire world one way or another. And some say that's still true, one way or another. The narratives have gotten complicated and tenuous and elaborate and complicated and often extraneous. But now, people, I don't know that it serves any purpose for the high and mighty attitude to be taken yet again in the Middle East. Now, some will point out, well, just exactly what are you saying? That because people hundreds of years ago wanted to kill the Indians in America, we can't be righteous about anybody wanting genocide in the Middle East? Well, as a matter of fact, yes. That's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying doesn't imply that the current generation is guilty of something and therefore can't accuse anybody else. No, that's not the gist of my suggestion. I'm commenting on, there being no room for righteousness, holier than thou kind of attitudes by any who are trying to dissect the wounds, stop the bleeding, stop the pain, and maybe start the healing. But I see already people, saying, well, we'll have this set of narratives ready to go, and then over here we'll have these narratives ready to go. Well, many people are not organized to have a dozen different narratives or even more, depending on whatever other people do anyway. They're not really trying to persuade very many, only a handful. The window dressing of democracy that calls for some people to participate, that wouldn't otherwise, I'm saying that the average Joe Six-Pack ought to keep in mind that, that there are appeals now, to jump on one political bandwagon or another. There's several available. And it's hilarious, isn't it? The funny thing is, many people think of this comes down to some sort of tribal or racial or ethnic issue, and I wonder, is it like a sixth grader's lunch period? What table do you sit at, in the faculty lounge or what? A lunchroom, sixth graders. The only reason I was named assistant principal within weeks of getting a job teaching for the Birmingham school system, actually for the federal government because they had taken over. It was a bad year back then for them. The only reason I was made assistant principal was so that I could organize the lunch schedule. No, I won't tell you how that came to be, but it was similar to the way I ended up shoveling coal during basic training at Fort Benning. And, I don't know how they've renamed that. I think I saw it in print somewhere. I know Fort Bragg is now Fort Liberty. I think they did something at Fort Benning, got a better name for it, I guess, although Liberty is just great, instead of Fort Bragg, but it seems a little kind of, inane somehow? Doesn't seem to have something to, how about Fort Hope or Fort Happiness or something? I don't know. Anyway, and we're going to need somebody, to shovel the coal, or the kids will starve and stuff like that. And I understand, I get it about people who, say that the end game is this or that, or for that matter, there's still nasty people who are determined to see Armageddon. Among their other demands must be, that the temple must be built again so that will signal the end of the world. Lawyers? Aha! To keep the world going, all we have to do is not build the temple. That's sort of like that joke about, do you want to be saved? Yes, but not yet. I don't know, folks. All I'm saying is I would rather reason with a bunch of sixth grade. Well, I was able to reason with grades 4 through 8. Thank you very much, and it was better in many ways than anything on a campus in Alabama that I tried to do. Having been elected editor of the paper, I soon found out they weren't interested in what I had planned and what I promised to do. And I was blindsided by some folks I think you folks have met in the media. But anyway, that didn't help, in terms of what also was going on. But back then I thought, sorry bunch of people, indeed. Back then I didn't know that the agonies I'm familiar with would only multiply and proliferate. Well, what I'm saying is it'd be a shame if I still have access to media. I never know, because you see, January 6th just keeps happening with the Proud Boys, the performances. I do take a very dim view of the vertical integration in Blount County or Oneonta. Very dim view indeed. And not only that, apparently a lot of people do, because I'm not bouncing back from the damage done. I don't have any way to explain all that. But I sense that they're spoiling for exactly what some people say. Some people say, oh, heavens, no. Nobody wants genocide. What? Nobody wanted what has happened to me? And there are no torts available? I would reason fairly well, I think, with young people, and we would go through, as best we know, what people are doing. And I think we would reason that, yes, unfortunately, some people are in, the crisis mode, do or die, fight or flight. And they figure, they've counted noses, and they've figured out that with the arrangements made in Washington, which are very hard to explain, but nobody really gets into the details, it's not a pretty picture to see what has been going on. In a way, I'm reminded of South Africa, which was hoisted on a petard. A terrible, terrible situation for them to get into, and they literally had to depend on intervention. You know, the boycotts and everything else. Of course, nowadays the Israelis would outlaw boycotts, for example, in the U.S. as a matter of law. They have in some places, even though there are court cases that settle that you can't legally be forced to buy something, you know, quite the way people are forced not to buy something. But some say, au contraire, we'll just new rule. About like, you know, which end of an egg are you allowed to open or crack in Gulliver's Travels. Martin Luther King could not have done all that he did in the time that he did it if he didn't have a legal boycott option. And yet, even after the Holocaust, it seems as though things have tightened up, and some people are delirious in terms of the cozy deals people make. I would say there are certain people whose perspective involves imaginary bridges that go way too far. They can't carry the load of the hordes that are trying to use the bridges. The elite bridges are not sturdy enough to carry the load put on them by people who are confident that their best friends are, you know, all going to meet in camera and have bourbon with the judge after supreme performances in the court of public opinion or before the jury of some sort. And then there are others who are not even well motivated, who have a similar out of control imagination. Who's going to shovel the coal? And all this, while all the fancy people are performing for each other, who's going to shovel the coal in the Middle East? Some are even being somber about how, you know, there could have to be, you know, an invasion of UN troops or something, or what? I don't know. It's all up to grabs. And all I want to remind people of is the comparison. It's an easy one. There are people like President Andrew Jackson, who's on a $20 bill, is that right? U.S. $20 bill, who stood up and said, I want to kill Indians. If you elect me, I'll kill Indians. What does that translate to in complicated ways in the Middle East? Who's calling for genocide? Who is saying we won't have genocide, I'll kill everybody who even talks about it? Hell, you put some people in America in charge, they're going to defend the First Amendment by using the Second Amendment to shut everybody up or something. I don't know. I know a few who are doing that. All I'm saying is, you know, as long as people just look the other way, and if they feel bad, go out and buy a new truck. You know, that new car smell. Maybe you want to go and sniff around a Cadillac, sniff around a Buick, sniff around a Lincoln. Just, you know, sniff, and see if you like that new car smell. See if you feel better if you do that. Just extended credit, easy terms, or whatever. Like people talk about, you hear a lot of people say, well, hell, if we send money to the Ukraine, that means we got to borrow the money from China. That's right. I'd add, you're going to borrow the money anyway. It's complicated, but I would say that, that isn't the basis for making the decision. But the money isn't free. But, that's about like, trying to reconcile the insanity of international economics with what people have to do with a checkbook, at the breakfast table. It isn't the same. It's similar, but it isn't the same. But yes, things are not going well when it comes to war and all that. Yes, their money laundering is in terms of arms deals. We don't give Ukraine or other people dollars. No strings attached. We give them coupons that are only redeemable from U.S. arms manufacturers. Kind of like food stamps. You get food stamps, and you're not supposed to get tobacco or liquor with food stamps, or buy a car with food stamps or so on. But people have a way of working around that, and you can go to jail if you do that. But there's stuff going on in the Middle East that boils down to self-fulfilling prophecies. Like Nixon said, we could do this, but it would be wrong. What, with a wink and a nod? It'd be wrong to burgle someplace. It'd be wrong to break into something. That would be wrong. Let's not do that, right? Who's going to shovel the coal? Would that be the unfortunate comparison? That, in an ideal world, people take turns shoveling coal, but we're in office, we're incumbent, and we have to do whatever it takes. And when the president does something, that makes it legal. Oh, really? I know some people who run social media that they can deal in defamation, and when they do it, it's no problem. They don't get sued. They ought to be sued, but it's strange that they're not. It's sort of like what's happening in the Middle East. Somebody ought to grab these violent people by the ear and take them out of the room or something. But nope, that doesn't happen because everybody's beholden to somebody else, and ultimately it's like trying to control a big classroom, say study hall with grades 4 through 8. Some teachers can't. I don't know why that is. And if I did know, I wouldn't admit to it. Okay? But some people can do it, and there are those who are annoyed when people who can are making others feel embarrassed. The dignity of the people, having to do with the Middle East is just immense. Way more dignity than is really efficient. But back in Jackson's day, he was a scrappy fellow, and dignity was not really the currency. It was power. Well, that's true in the Middle East now, but at the same time, they're dancing the minuet, of dignity among peers deciding what to do with the, let me put it this way, with the unwashed numbers, not being treated the way advertisers plunder folks in the U.S., but like cattle who must simply do as they're told. Ultimately, when an economy gets wound up too tightly, a working committee of very many can loosen things up a little bit so that redistribution of ideas, redistribution of opportunities, redistribution of money is done by a sufficient number for it to work. Some say, well, a republic can do that, and then by the time we beg all the questions, we're stuck with what now affects so much in America. People are bruised, battered, burned, and fed up. And the first thing they should be able to reach for, what, is a smartphone? You might be right. But they don't have smartphones in the hands of the young troops. They give them firearms. Oh, it's true, they probably have a smartphone also, but they're put in jeopardy, so what's the phrase? Heaven help them? Because apparently nobody very mortal can do any good for them.